I never thought my life would be measured in moments, before and after. Before, when I was just Daniel Reeves, content IT project manager with a decent job, a comfortable home in Denver, and 12 years of what I believed was a solid marriage. Then, after a single phone call shattered that reality like a hammer through glass, it was an ordinary Tuesday in March. Spring was showing the first signs of defeating winter, and I was wrapping up at the office, my mind already drifting to thoughts of the salmon I planned to grill for dinner. Sarah, my wife, had texted earlier that she'd be home late, another strategy meeting for the pharmaceutical company where she worked as marketing director. These late nights had become increasingly common over the past few months, but I'd never questioned them. My name is Michael Hamilton. I work with your wife at Nexus Pharma. A pause. Look, this is incredibly awkward, but I think you need to know something. My stomach tightened as he continued speaking. Words floated toward me like debris in slow motion. Affair, planning, this Friday, hotel reservation. Been going on for months. Everyone knows. I've met Richard twice at company functions. Mid-40s, divorced, expensive watch, perfect teeth. The kind of man who maintained eye contact a second too long when speaking to your wife. Why are you telling me this? I managed to ask, my throat constricting around each word. Because I've been where you are, Michael replied. My ex-wife, well, I wish someone had done the same for me. The phone felt impossibly heavy in my hand when the call ended. I sat perfectly still, staring at the spreadsheet on my computer screen, the numbers blurring together. This couldn't be right. Sarah and I had been together since college. We'd built a life. We talked about starting a family soon. Surely this was a misunderstanding. Or perhaps Michael Hamilton had some vendetta against Sarah or her boss. People spread rumors in workplaces all the time, right? But as I drove home, his words kept replaying in my mind. The increasing late nights. The new clothes. The password suddenly appearing on her phone 6 months ago. The decreased intimacy she attributed to work stress. When I arrived home, our house was empty. I walked through each room like a stranger, seeing everything with new eyes. Our wedding photo on the mantel. Sarah's perfume on the bathroom counter. The king-size bed we'd saved for during our first year of marriage. I made my way to her desk in our home office and opened her laptop, password protected. Of course. I tried her usual combinations. Nothing worked. Then I noticed her planner beneath a stack of magazines. I flipped through the pages, scanning for this Friday's date. There it was, in her neat handwriting, 6:30 p.m. dinner with marketing team. But superimposed on the entry, written in hurried pencil that she'd tried to erase, Ritz-Carlton, room 718. The room tilted around me. I stumbled to the bathroom, just in time to empty the contents of my stomach into the toilet. On my knees, gripping cold porcelain, I felt a surreal detachment, as if watching someone else's life collapse. But the acid burn in my throat was real. The trembling in my hands was real. The crushing pressure in my chest was real. My phone pinged with a text from Sarah. Meeting running long. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch, unwilling to share our bed, staring at the ceiling as possibilities whirled through my mind. Confrontation. Denial. Divorce. Forgiveness. None seemed real. By dawn, one thought had crystallized with cold clarity. I needed proof. Concrete. Undeniable evidence that would make it impossible for Sarah to gaslight me or dismiss Michael's warning as office politics. When Sarah emerged from our bedroom the next morning, I was at the kitchen table with coffee, pretending to read news on my tablet. You're up early, she said, looking momentarily surprised before leaning in to kiss my cheek. I forced myself not to recoil. Couldn't sleep. Work stuff, I lied, watching her pour coffee into her travel mug, noticing how she avoided my eyes. Had she always done that? Or was I seeing everything differently now? I might be late again tonight, she said, checking her reflection in the microwave door, smoothing her blonde hair. Big product launch coming up. No problem, I replied, my voice eerily calm. I've got plenty to keep me busy. As soon as she left, I made 2 calls. The first was to Adam West, a college friend who now ran a private investigation agency. The second was to Michael Hamilton, arranging to meet him after work. I needed to know everything. Meeting Michael was surreal, like consulting with a stranger about the dismantling of my life. We sat in a corner booth at a bar, 20 miles from Sarah's workplace. far enough to avoid accidental encounters with her colleagues. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Rumors started about 4 months ago, but I only knew for certain last week when I overheard them planning this weekend. He hesitated before sliding his phone across the table. I took screenshots of their text exchanges. She sometimes uses the department's group messaging account. Forgets to log out on the shared computer. Richard, reservation confirmed. Champagne, strawberries, and no interruptions for 12 hours. Sarah, make it 15. Told Daniel I'm staying overnight for an early Saturday meeting. Yes. My hands trembled so violently I had to set the phone down. 15 hours, I whispered, bile rising in my throat. How could I miss this? The question wasn't really for Michael, but he answered anyway. Because you trusted her. That's not a character flaw. It's what decent people do. I didn't feel decent. I felt stupid, blind, emasculated. As I drove home, a primal rage built within me, not just at Sarah, but at myself. How many signs had I ignored? How many times had I accepted flimsy excuses because confrontation seemed too uncomfortable? Adam called the next day while I was at work, sequestered in my office with the door closed. I've got eyes on them, he said without preamble. They met for lunch yesterday. Nothing overtly intimate in public, but the body language is familiar. Too familiar for a boss and employee. What about their phones? Emails? My voice sounded strange to my own ears, detached, clinical. Working on it. I'll have digital access by tomorrow. What exactly do you want to know? Everything. Nothing. I wasn't sure anymore. Jess, confirm what's happening. And Friday night. I need documentation of Friday night. Daniel, Adam's voice softened. Are you sure? Once you see certain things, you can't unsee them. The word hung in the air between us. Divorce. Until that moment, I hadn't consciously decided, but as soon as I said it aloud, I knew it was inevitable. That night, Sarah came home earlier than expected. I was in the garage, methodically organizing tools I rarely used, desperate for any activity to occupy my hands. There you are, she said, leaning against the doorframe. Everything okay? You didn't answer my texts. I glanced up, seeing not my wife of 12 years, but a stranger wearing her face. Battery died, I lied, wondering if deception came as easily to her. The thought of eating anything made my stomach revolt, but I nodded and followed her inside. Throughout dinner, I observed her like a scientist studying a specimen, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, how she asked questions about my day but barely listened to the answers, the slight smile that played on her lips when her phone vibrated. Oh, just work stuff. She tucked the phone away quickly. How's the curry? Later, while she showered, the temptation to check her phone was overwhelming, but I resisted. Adam would provide concrete evidence soon enough. Besides, a deeper, more prideful part of me refused to become the stereotype of the suspicious husband snooping through his wife's things. She had already diminished me enough. That night in bed, she reached for me, her hand sliding across my chest in a familiar invitation. I froze, repulsed at the thought of being intimate with someone planning to betray me in less than 48 hours. She accepted this without question, rolling away with a casual feel better that somehow hurt more than an argument would have. Had our intimacy meant so little to her all along? Sleep eluded me again. Beside me, Sarah breathed evenly, peacefully, the sleep of someone unburdened by conscience. In the darkness, grief gave way to rage so intense, it frightened me. I imagined confronting her, exposing her lies, watching her perfect life crumble as mine had. I imagined the look on Richard Keller's face when his affair was revealed to the company executives. I imagined scorched earth and salted fields. By morning, however, cold determination had replaced white-hot anger. I would not give either of them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I would be strategic, calculated. I would protect myself first. I contacted James Sullivan, a divorce attorney Adam had recommended, and scheduled a consultation for Thursday. Then I called my bank and began the process of separating our finances. Small steps toward dismantling a shared life. Adam's updates continued throughout Thursday. Photos of Sarah and Richard in his car, their hands casually touching across the console. Screenshots of text messages coordinating their Friday rendezvous, including explicit exchanges that seared themselves into my memory. She's all in on this, Daniel, Adam said gently during our final call. Tomorrow night, I'll have a team documenting everything. Video, audio, the works. Enough to make any divorce proceedings very straightforward. That night, Sarah announced she was heading to bed early to prepare for her big presentation tomorrow. She kissed my cheek and I managed to return the gesture without flinching. "Good luck with the presentation," I said, meeting her eyes directly. "I hope it goes exactly as you deserve." A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. So brief I might have imagined it, before she smiled. "Thanks. I've been preparing for this for a long time." Friday morning arrived with a strange sense of clarity. While Sarah rushed through her morning routine, selecting her outfit with unusual care, I watched with detached interest. She chose the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 3 months ago. She hesitated, just for a second. "No, I've had it a while. Just haven't had occasion to wear it." Another lie, so effortless. I nodded and smiled. "Well, you look beautiful in it." That seemed to unsettle her more than if I'd been cold. "Thanks," she said, checking her watch. "I should go. Big day ahead." After she left, I met with James Sullivan, who laid out my options with clinical precision. "Colorado is a no-fault state," he explained. "But evidence of infidelity can still impact property division and support issues, especially if marital assets were used to fund the affair." I nodded, thinking of the credit card statements I'd reviewed, hotel charges, expensive restaurant bills on nights Sarah claimed to be working late, a lingerie purchase from a boutique that definitely wasn't my anniversary gift. "I want everything documented," I told him, "and I want to be ready to move immediately." "Tonight," I said, the plan crystallizing in my mind. "I want divorce papers drawn up today, ready to be filed Monday morning. And I want the locks changed on our house this afternoon." James raised an eyebrow. "That's aggressive, Daniel." "Courts generally frown on locking a spouse out prior to legal proceedings." "She has another place to stay," I said coldly. "With her lover. I'm simply helping her transition to her new living arrangements." By mid-afternoon, everything was in motion. New locks installed. Security system recoded. Divorce papers prepared. I had systematically separated our digital lives, changing passwords on shared accounts, backing up evidence, protecting what was mine. Each message reinforced my resolve. This wasn't just about hurt pride or broken vows. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my agency, my life. At 5:30, I received one final update from Adam. They're leaving separately. She's heading home first. He follows in 30 minutes. Confirmed reservation at Ritz, 7 p.m. I sat in our living room, lights dimmed, waiting. When Sarah arrived at 6:15, she seemed startled to find me there. She set down her bag, composure faltering slightly. "Just a work dinner. I told you, there's this marketing team event." "At the Ritz-Carlton? Room 718? I watched her face drain of color. "That must be some marketing strategy you're discussing." "Don't," I cut her off, standing. "Don't insult both of us with more lies." She recovered quickly, shifting from shock to defense. "You've been spying on me? Going through my things? Interesting that's your first concern," I noted. Not denying it, just angry you got caught. "It's exactly what I think, Sarah. You and Richard Keller. 4 months at least, probably longer. Weekend getaways disguised as conferences. Late nights at work. I have the receipts, the messages, the hotel bills, everything." Her eyes darted around the room as if seeking escape. "We need to talk about this. I can explain." "No need," I said with a calm I didn't entirely feel. "You have a choice right now. Stay home, cancel your date, and we can discuss what a separation looks like. Or leave for your rendezvous, and find your belongings on the front lawn when you return." "Try me." My voice was steel. 12 years, Sarah. 12 years, and this is how you chose to end it. Sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face, making me a joke to your colleagues. "It's not like that," she insisted, tears forming. "I made a mistake. We can work through this. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. Planning to spend 15 hours in a hotel with another man while telling your husband you're at a work event? That's a deliberate betrayal." She reached for me, but I stepped back. "Daniel, please, I love you. He doesn't mean anything." "If you walk out that door tonight," I said quietly, "our marriage is over. No discussion, no second chances. Make your choice." For a moment, I thought I'd gotten through to her. She hesitated, tears streaming down her face. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it reflexively. She looked up, and I saw the decision in her eyes before she spoke. "I need to go. Just for tonight. To explain things to him. I'll come back and we'll talk. I promise." She grabbed her purse, hesitating at the door. "This isn't over. I'll be back tomorrow and we'll figure this out." As her car pulled away, I felt something unexpected. Not devastation, but liberation. For months, I'd been living someone else's life, a facade maintained by lies and willful ignorance. Now, at least, I was standing in truth. I pulled out my phone and made 2 calls. The first to a moving company specializing in emergency services. The second to Adam. "I'm sorry, man," he replied. "Team's in place at the hotel. We'll get everything you need." The moving crew arrived within the hour. 4 efficient men who asked no questions as they systematically packed Sarah's clothes, jewelry, personal items, and the few pieces of furniture she'd brought into our marriage. Everything was loaded into a storage unit I'd rented that morning, the access information ready to be texted to her when the time came. By midnight, all traces of Sarah had been removed from our home. I changed the locks again, a redundancy the locksmith questioned but performed anyway, and recoded the security system. Then I sat in my emptied bedroom and waited for the evidence Adam had promised. It arrived at 1:37 a.m., a secure link containing photos, videos, and audio recordings. I steeled myself before opening it, but nothing could have prepared me for the visceral pain of seeing my wife in another man's arms, hearing her laugh at jokes about me, watching her slip off her wedding ring before entering the hotel. Yet with each image, each damning minute of footage, my resolve hardened. This wasn't just an affair. It was a systematic betrayal involving countless calculated decisions. Each lie she'd told was a choice. Each time she'd kissed me after being with him was a choice. I finally slept around dawn, waking to a barrage of texts and missed calls from Sarah. I ignored them all, watching through the security camera as she repeatedly tried her key in the new locks, growing increasingly frustrated. Finally, I texted her. "Your belongings are in storage unit number 147 at Secure Store on Denver Avenue. Access code 2259. Do not attempt to enter my home again." "Exactly what I said I would do," I replied evenly. "Our marriage is over." "Indeed you do. To the storage unit containing your possessions, which I have generously paid for through the end of the month. Your rights to this house and our marriage were forfeited when you chose to spend the night with Richard." "Daniel, please." Her voice softened, tearful now. "Let me in. Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. I have videos, Sarah, audio recordings, explicit text messages. Your coworkers knew. Everyone knew except me." I almost laughed at her indignation. "Colorado is a single-party consent state for recordings. As for the surveillance, all conducted in public spaces, perfectly legal, and extremely thorough." "My sister was right about you," she spat, anger replacing tears. "Controlling, paranoid." 20 minutes later, my doorbell rang continuously. Security footage showed Sarah's sister Judy standing on my porch, arms crossed, face contorted with righteous anger. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "How dare you?" Judy launched in without preamble. "Throwing Sarah's things out? Changing the locks? Who do you think you are?" "A man who caught his wife cheating and decided not to tolerate it," I replied calmly. "Hello to you too, Judy." I pulled out my phone, tapped a few times, and held it up. Sarah's voice filled the air. "Daniel has no idea. He never questions anything. Sometimes I think I could tell him I'm working late while standing in lingerie, and he just asks if I want him to save dinner." Laughter. Hers and a male voice. "God, Richard, I've wasted so many years with him." I stopped the recording as Judy's face registered shock. "That doesn't sound like one mistake to me. That sounds like contempt." "I have hours of similar recordings. Would you like to hear the one where they discuss their future plans? Or perhaps the one where Sarah describes intimate details of our marriage for Richard's amusement?" Judy's righteous indignation deflated visibly. "Sarah said you just had a fight, that you were overreacting." Sarah lied. It's what she does best, apparently. I stepped back from the doorway. "You should go. The divorce papers will be filed Monday morning. If Sarah has any sense, she'll sign them without contest." "Divorce?" Judy looked genuinely shocked. "But you've been together forever. You can't just throw that away." "I didn't," I said simply. "She did. Every time she met him. Every lie she told. Every night she came home to me after being with him. She threw our marriage away in pieces, and last night she disposed of the last remnant." As Judy drove away, I felt a strange sense of peace, the calm clarity that comes with absolute certainty. There would be no reconciliation, no forgiveness, no second chances. The life I had built with Sarah was over. But my own life? That was just beginning. Monday morning, Sarah was served divorce papers at her office, a deliberate choice on my part. According to Adam's contact, she collapsed, creating a scene that ensured everyone knew exactly what was happening. Richard apparently retreated to his office and closed the blinds. I felt no satisfaction at the news, only a grim sense of justice. The humiliation she had planned for me, being the oblivious husband, the subject of office gossip and pity, had been redirected to its rightful recipients. The following weeks brought increasingly desperate attempts at reconciliation. Sarah camped outside my house until I threatened a restraining order. Her parents called, begging me to reconsider, insisting families should stay together, until I sent them selected clips from Adam's evidence. Sarah's final stand came during our preliminary divorce hearing. Seated across the conference table, she looked smaller somehow, her confidence diminished. When her attorney claimed there had been no infidelity, merely emotional confusion, I simply nodded to James, who distributed copies of a meticulously prepared evidence packet to everyone present. Page 1 contains hotel receipts, James explained dispassionately. Pages 2 through 7 document text exchanges. Pages 8 through 12 contain witness statements from Nexus Pharma employees. The thumb drive contains audio and video evidence I suggest reviewing privately. Sarah's attorney flipped through the pages, his expression growing increasingly grim. After a whispered conference with Sarah, he requested a recess. When they returned, Sarah's eyes were red-rimmed but dry. "I'll agree to the terms," she said hollowly. As we left the attorney's office, she tried one last time, catching my arm in the parking lot. "I made a terrible mistake," she said, her voice breaking. "I'll regret it for the rest of my life." "But 12 years, Daniel. Don't throw away 12 years. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since discovering her betrayal. The woman I had loved was there, somewhere beneath the lies and selfishness. For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of the old connection, the pull of shared history and comfortable familiarity. Then I remembered her laughter as she mocked me to her lover, and the moment passed. "I'm not throwing away anything," I told her quietly. "I'm preserving what's left of my self-respect. Goodbye, Sarah." As I drove away, leaving her standing alone in the parking lot, I felt neither triumph nor despair, only the certainty that I had done what was necessary to reclaim my life and my dignity. The road ahead was unclear, but for the first time in months, it was authentically mine. 2 days after our meeting at the attorney's office, Sarah quit her job at Nexus Pharma and effectively disappeared. Her sister informed me she'd gone somewhere to clear her head, refusing to provide details. I didn't press for information. The less I knew about Sarah's whereabouts, the easier it would be to move forward. The divorce proceedings continued in her absence, her attorney handling what little response was required. Richard Keller, I learned through Michael, had been quietly transferred to another division following an internal review of departmental conduct. The first few weeks alone in the house were harder than I'd anticipated. I had won, in a sense, exposed the affair, maintained my dignity, secured favorable divorce terms, yet victory felt hollow in the echoing rooms where our marriage had once lived. Sleepless nights became routine, my mind churning over the same questions. Had she ever loved me? When had it all gone wrong? Could I have done something differently? One particularly dark evening, scrolling through old photos I should have deleted, I called my mother. It works especially on 38-year-old men trying to be strong when their world has fallen apart, she said gently. "Talk to me, Daniel." So I did. For the first time since the whole ordeal began, I let myself break down completely, not in anger, but in grief for the future I had believed in, the family we might have had, the trust I wasn't sure I could ever rebuild. "I keep thinking I should have seen it coming," I admitted. "There must have been signs." "Maybe there were," Mom said. "But loving someone means choosing to see the best in them. That's not a weakness, Daniel." "I know." A pause. "When your father left, I thought I'd never trust anyone again. I was so angry. At him, at myself, even at you kids sometimes." This surprised me. Mom had always seemed so composed during my father's abandonment when I was 12. "You never showed it." "Of course not. I was the parent." "But I was also broken-hearted," she sighed. "The mistake I made was letting that heartbreak define me for too many years." "Don't do that, Daniel. Feel everything. The anger, the sadness, the loss, but don't let it become who you are. One day at a time. I focused on what I could control. I built new routines. I remembered who I was before I was half of a couple." She paused. "And eventually, I realized being betrayed was something that happened to me, not something that defined me. Her words settled in my chest, not immediately healing anything, but creating space for the possibility of healing. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I called James Sullivan with a request. I need to get away for a while. Can we postpone any non-essential proceedings? Most of it can be handled without you, he assured me. Where are you headed? I hadn't planned that far. Not sure yet. Somewhere different. Somewhere without memories. 2 days later, I was on a plane to Portland, where a client needed on-site IT infrastructure upgrades, a project I would normally have delegated, but now welcomed as a distraction. The change of scenery proved therapeutic. In a new city, surrounded by unfamiliar faces, I wasn't Daniel whose wife cheated, but simply Daniel, the IT consultant from Denver. The project was meant to last 2 weeks, but extended to 4, as additional needs were identified. I threw myself into the work, finding solace in the logical progression of technical problems and solutions, so unlike the messy, irrational nature of human relationships. It was during this time that I met the Martins, an elderly couple who owned the small firm. Their granddaughter Darla worked as their office manager, a sharp-witted woman in her early 30s with a no-nonsense attitude and a surprisingly comprehensive knowledge of network infrastructure. "You're different from our last IT consultant," she remarked one afternoon as we worked late configuring servers. "Different," she repeated with a slight smile. "Less condescending. More present. You actually listen when people explain their problems. Most tech guys are already formulating their response while pretending to listen. No ring, but the tan line hasn't faded. You check your phone constantly, but never respond to messages with anything more than a frown. And you agreed to extend a business trip by 2 weeks with zero hesitation." She raised an eyebrow. Detective work isn't complicated. I should have been offended by her presumption, but her matter-of-fact delivery was oddly refreshing, after months of pitying looks and careful avoidance of the topic. She nodded thoughtfully. My divorce took 18 months. Felt like 18 years. "What happened?" I asked, then immediately backtracked. "Sorry, that's not my business." "It's fine," she said, typing something on her keyboard. "He decided monogamy was an outdated social construct, about 3 years in. I decided marriage was an outdated social construct about 10 minutes after that revelation. Despite myself, I laughed, the first genuine laugh in longer than I could remember. 4 years, 2 months, and approximately 17 days, she replied without hesitation. But who's counting? She tilted her head, considering the question seriously. Some days better than others. I no longer fantasize about his painful demise, which my therapist assures me is progress. Our conversation was interrupted by a system alert, but something shifted between us that evening. Over the remaining days of my extended stay, Darla and I developed a cautious friendship built on shared experience and surprising commonalities. She was a hiker. I was a climber. She loved obscure foreign films. I had a weakness for classic science fiction. We both harbored an irrational hatred for cilantro. More importantly, she understood the particular variety of trauma that infidelity inflicts. Not just the betrayal itself, but the retroactive poisoning of memories, the constant questioning of one's judgment, the difficulty of trusting again. "It gets better," she told me over dinner the night before my scheduled return to Denver. "Not all at once, and not in a straight line, but it does get better." I wanted to believe her. Looking at her across the table, confident, whole, unburdened by the past, I could almost envision a similar future for myself. When I returned to Denver, the house felt different, not because anything had changed, but because I had. During my absence, James had continued the divorce proceedings, and a preliminary agreement had been reached. Sarah had apparently resurfaced, accepted most of my terms, and asked only for certain sentimental items I had no interest in keeping. "She's relocated to Florida," James informed me during our update meeting, "with Richard Keller, according to her attorney." The news should have devastated me. Instead, I felt an unexpected sense of closure. "Good for them," I said, surprising myself with the sincerity of the sentiment. "I hope it was worth it." James studied me curiously. "Most clients in your position wouldn't be so magnanimous." "A month ago, I wouldn't have been," I admitted. "But carrying anger is exhausting. I'd rather focus on rebuilding my life, and that's what I did. I started small, replacing furniture Sarah had chosen, repainting rooms in colors I preferred, establishing new routines that were exclusively mine. I rejoined my climbing gym, reconnected with friends I'd neglected, and even started taking guitar lessons, something Sarah had always discouraged as a waste of time. My mother visited often, her support unwavering even when I hit inevitable setbacks. There were still difficult days, birthdays, anniversaries, random Tuesdays when memory ambushed me unexpectedly, but they grew less frequent, less debilitating. 3 months after my Portland trip, I received an unexpected email from Darla. Grandpa's network is acting up again. He insists no one but you can fix it. I told him we have local IT support, but he's stubborn. Any chance you'll be in Portland soon? Or should I prepare for 3 days of him cursing at the computer? I smiled at her direct approach, so characteristic of the woman I'd come to respect during my time there. Without overthinking it, I replied, "As it happens, I have some flexibility in my schedule next week. Would Tuesday work? I can fly in for a day or two to sort things out." "Perfect. Grandpa will be thrilled. I'll book you at the hotel downtown unless you have other preferences." That weekend, as I packed for the short trip, I realized I was genuinely looking forward to it. Not just as an escape from my still-healing life in Denver, but as a destination with positive associations. Progress, of a sort. The technical issues at the Martins' office were minor, resolved within hours of my arrival. When I mentioned this to Mrs. Martin, suggesting I could catch an earlier flight home, she looked genuinely distressed. "But we've planned dinner," she protested. "George has been talking about your visit for days." I glanced at Darla, expecting her to roll her eyes at her grandmother's transparent matchmaking, but she simply raised an eyebrow in silent challenge. That evening at the Martins' home was the most normal I'd felt in nearly a year. Conversation flowing easily, laughter coming naturally, the heavy weight of betrayal temporarily lifted from my shoulders. When George and Eleanor retired early, Darla suggested a walk along the waterfront. "They're not subtle, are they?" I said as we strolled beneath the glow of street lamps. "They were devastated by my divorce," Darla explained. "In their generation, marriage was forever, no matter what. They couldn't understand how Paul could betray our vows, or how I could walk away without fighting harder." She was quiet for several steps. Too hard, probably. I spent 6 months trying to save something that was already dead. Counseling, date nights, weekend getaways, the whole reconciliation playbook, all while he was still seeing her. "Don't be. It taught me something valuable." She stopped, turning to face me directly. "There's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself, letting go of anger so it doesn't consume you. Reconciliation requires both parties to rebuild trust. I forgave Paul eventually, but I never considered reconciliation once I understood who he really was." Her words resonated with something that had been forming in my own mind. "I think I'm getting there. With the forgiveness part. It's easier knowing she's moved on, that I'm not just a backup plan if things don't work out with Richard." "Good," Darla said firmly. "Keep moving forward. It's the only direction worth going." Before I left Portland the next day, we exchanged personal contact information, no longer needing the pretense of business communication. What followed was a careful, measured reconnection. Texts about everyday occurrences, occasional phone calls that stretched into hours, video chats that became standing weekly appointments. We were both cautious, both carrying scars from previous betrayals, both aware of the complexity of building something new from the ashes of broken promises. But there was also something undeniably healing in the slow, deliberate way we came to know each other. No false intensity, no desperate clinging, just authentic connection growing at its own pace. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my mother made an unexpected apology during Sunday dinner. "When I first heard about Sarah, I told you to consider reconciliation. I said everyone deserves a second chance." She shook her head. "I've watched you these past months, rebuilding your life, rediscovering yourself. You're happier now than you were in the last years of your marriage, even if you couldn't see it then." "Let me finish," she insisted. "I pushed reconciliation because that's what I was taught was right. But seeing you now, I understand something I wish I'd learned sooner. Staying would have cost you your self-respect, and no relationship is worth that price." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You were trying to help. I know, but I was wrong. And I'm proud of you for having the courage to walk away." That conversation marked another milestone in my healing journey. Validation that the path I'd chosen, though difficult, had been the right one for me. A week later, Judy called, the first contact from Sarah's family since the divorce. "I thought you should know," she said without preamble. "Sarah and Richard broke up. She's back in Colorado." I absorbed this information with surprising detachment. "Thank you for telling me." She's had a rough time, Judy continued, an unmistakable note of expectation in her voice. The job in Florida didn't work out. Richard, well, it turns out you weren't the only one he was lying to. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish suffering on Sarah. Is there something specific you wanted me to do with this information, Judy? It wasn't a mistake, I said gently but firmly. It was a series of deliberate choices made over months. Judy sighed. She said you'd say that. Just think about it, okay? 12 years is a long time to throw away. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my living room, waiting for the turmoil her call should have created. Instead, I felt only a calm certainty. The Daniel who had loved Sarah no longer existed, transformed by pain, yes, but also by growth and self-discovery. The life I was building now had no place for her in it. 2 days later, I received a text from an unknown number, Sarah's new contact information, I realized as I read the message. Daniel, I heard Judy spoke with you. I'm back in town and would love to meet for coffee. There's so much I need to say to you. Please. Okay. I considered not responding at all, but that felt like avoidance rather than closure. Instead, I wrote, Sarah, I wish you well, but meeting wouldn't be helpful for either of us. Please respect that our relationship is over and we've both moved on to different lives. I never moved on. What I did was the biggest mistake of my life. I've changed. Richard was a terrible person who manipulated me when I was vulnerable. Please, just one conversation. The old excuses, the deflection of responsibility. Nothing had changed after all. I sent one final message. That evening I called Darla and told her about the exchange. Am I being cold? I asked after recounting the conversation. No, she said without hesitation. You're being clear. There's a difference. From everything you've told me, she's still making excuses, still refusing to truly own her choices. Maybe she has, Darla acknowledged. But that doesn't obligate you to let her back into your life. Her certainty steadied me. I'm flying to Chicago for a conference next month, I said, changing the subject. It's a 3-hour layover in Portland. Would you be interested in grabbing lunch? The slight pause before her answer made my heart race unexpectedly. I think I could be persuaded, she finally said, a smile in her voice. Lunch turned into dinner when my flight was delayed, dinner into a long walk through her favorite neighborhoods, the walk into a quiet admission that whatever was growing between us deserved a chance to develop further. I'm scared, she confessed as we stood in the airport terminal for my rescheduled flight. Not of you, but of doing this again, trusting again. I know, I said. Me too. But I think, maybe that's okay. Maybe being scared and doing it anyway is what courage looks like. She smiled, touching my face with a gentleness that made my chest ache. When did you get so wise, Daniel Reeves? Around the same time I got my heart broken, I admitted. Silver linings and all that. In the months that followed, Darla and I built something I had never experienced before. A relationship founded on absolute honesty, mutual respect, and the hard-won wisdom of people who understood the value of integrity. We took things slowly, deliberately, each step forward made with full awareness of what we were building and what we stood to lose. 1 year after my divorce was finalized, I received a certified letter from Sarah's attorney. Inside was a formal apology, a check representing her portion of our joint savings account that I had left untouched during the divorce, and a brief note in her handwriting. I'm finally taking responsibility for what I did. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I truly regret the pain I caused you. I showed the letter to Darla that weekend, when she visited Denver. What do you think? I asked as she read it. I think it's genuine, she said, handing it back. And I think it doesn't change anything for you. I deposited the check into a charity account supporting children of divorce, then filed the letter away in a box of documents related to my previous marriage, a chapter closed, a lesson learned, but no longer the defining story of my life. 2 years after that fateful call from Michael Hamilton, I stood on the summit of Mount Rainier, Darla beside me, both of us exhilarated and exhausted from the climb. We had been dating for 18 months, splitting our time between Denver and Portland, building a relationship that honored our individual strengths while creating something greater than either of us separately. I have something for you, she said, reaching into her pack and extracting a small wooden box. It's not what you think, she added quickly, seeing my expression. Open it. Inside was a compass, beautifully crafted, with an inscription on the back, for Daniel, who found his true north even in the darkest storm. There's one more thing, she said, suddenly uncharacteristically nervous. My grandparents are retiring. They've asked me to take over the company. I nodded, understanding the unspoken question. Are you asking me to move to Portland, Darla? I'm asking what you think about it. She clarified. About us building something permanent. No pressure, no ultimatums, just possibilities. Looking at her, strong, honest, fearless in her vulnerability, I felt a certainty I had never known with Sarah, a foundation built on mutual respect rather than desperate need or convenience. I think, I said carefully, that I love you, and that my company has been trying to expand to the Northwest for years, and that I've been waiting for the right time to tell you both of those things. It's a, let's figure out the details together, I said, taking her hand. But yes, essentially yes. 6 months later, I relocated to Portland, accepting a promotion to manage my company's new regional office. Darla and I bought a house together, a deliberate choice to build a home rather than rush into marriage neither of us was ready to consider yet. Shortly after the move, I received one final communication about Sarah. Judy texted to inform me that Sarah had left Colorado again, this time for a fresh start in Arizona. She had completed therapy, found a new career path, and begun dating someone who, in Judy's words, treats her with the respect and patience she needs. For the first time, I felt nothing but genuine hope for her well-being. Whatever karma had demanded had been paid in full, by both of us. That night, lying beside Darla in our new home, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The pain of betrayal had nearly destroyed me, forcing me to question everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and my own judgment. Yet from those ashes, something unexpected had emerged, not just survival, but genuine transformation. I had learned to trust my instincts, to value honesty above comfort, to recognize that self-respect must be the foundation of any healthy relationship. I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed, built boundaries I never knew I needed, and found the courage to begin again with an open heart but eyes wide open. How sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing that could happen for you, I replied. And she was right. Together, we had created something neither of us thought possible again. Trust built on truth, intimacy founded on integrity, love chosen with clear eyes and full hearts. Not despite our past wounds, but because of them. Because they had taught us the true value of honesty, the non-negotiable nature of respect, and the courage required to love authentically after betrayal. My journey from betrayal to renewal wasn't a straight line. It had dark valleys, unexpected turns, and painful revelations. But standing on the other side, I could finally see what my mother had tried to tell me, that betrayal was something that happened to me, not something that defined me. What defined me now were the choices I'd made in response, to honor my own worth, to rebuild with intention rather than desperation, to recognize that sometimes walking away is the most courageous act of self-love possible. As Darla's breathing deepened into sleep beside me, I closed my eyes with a profound sense of gratitude, not for the pain that had brought me here, but for the strength I'd found to move through it and emerge not just intact, but transformed. Not just surviving, but truly living again. The man I had become wasn't defined by Sarah's betrayal, but by my response to it, a response that had ultimately led me not back to what was comfortable and familiar, but forward to what was authentic and true. In losing what I thought was irreplaceable, I had found something I never knew to seek, a life rebuilt on foundations of genuine integrity, self-knowledge, and the courage to trust again. Not everyone gets a second chance at happiness after such profound betrayal. I knew how fortunate I was, how precious this new beginning. And I promised myself that I would honor it every day, not by forgetting the past, but by using its lessons to build a future worthy of the journey that had brought me here. In the end, the greatest revenge against betrayal wasn't anger or retaliation, but the quiet triumph of rebuilding a life so authentic and fulfilled that the betrayal became merely a chapter in my story. Important, certainly, but no longer the defining one. That, I realized as sleep finally claimed me, was the most empowering truth of all.